System Chronicles Season 2. I can't believe we've actually made it to a second season already. We've had so many great guests, including many of the partnerati of the partner ecosystem and the channel in B2B technology over the last 4 months or so. And we're already starting our new season. So Ecosystem Chronicles, for those of you who are new, we're the global forum for partnership leaders in the B2B tech sector, specifically to talk about partner data, partner insights, and partner intelligence. And why is it so important? Well, Gartner's saying that 65% of B2B sales organizations are transitioning from intuition-based to data-driven decision-making by 2026. And we need to be as well in the channel. It's the only way to be competitive, actionable, reactive, and enable you to take your careers as individual partner professionals forward to the highest levels that you possibly can. So I'm Dina Moskowitz. I'm also CEO of Partner Optimizer, and we are a partner intelligence company that brings partner deep proprietary data mining that pulls up all sorts of partner intelligence and insights based upon company business attributes and enables you to have that line of sight into partner profiles and partner intelligence. And so there's so many ways to leverage partner data and insights within a partner program. And that's why we have so many episodes and they keep on coming with new topics. And that's why I'm really excited today to bring forward a topic that's been on everyone's mind if you're an established or enterprise channel or a growth stage channel. And it's all about understanding your break-even point with long-tail partners. And here to talk to me about that is somebody that is extremely accomplished in the channel, in channel consulting for more than 30 years. He's worked with international partner organizations, helping them to grow and understand their break-even points so that they can build their channels more efficiently. His name is Harald Horgen, and he's the CEO of the York Group. And he has worked with large enterprise companies from Microsoft and Dell and HP down to emerging and startup channel partner programs as well. So he understands it from multiple angles, and he's provided his services across the globe. So he understands the nuances of different markets as well. And so Harald, welcome to Partner Ecosystem Chronicles. I'm so excited to have you here. And thank you for taking the time out of your day to share some of your secret sauce about how and why you've been so successful on the channel. How, by the way, did you get started in the channel in the first place?
Hi, Dina. Yeah, I really appreciate you bringing me on and having me kick off your second season. Yeah, so we've been doing channels for a long time. And actually started, I was in France in the 1990s, and I was working for a US company that was expanding into Europe. And they had signed a joint venture with a French company to do the expansion across Europe. And so I moved to France to do the European business development for this joint venture. And there was a company that was in the IT field. They were one of the early franchise organizations way back in the day. And so as I was doing that, I was building up a network of contacts across Europe. And I realized that there was a real need for US companies in particular at that time to find good partners across Europe. And many of them were just signing up, the Belgian consultant that had a mailing list. And I saw that there's a real need to have more on the ground experience and contacts. And so I started working with a lot of early stage US companies to set up their channels in Europe. We had some very big successes initially that helped us expand internationally. And that's how it all got started. So we've been through a lot of technology cycles, a lot of economic cycles, and have a really good understanding on why channels work and most importantly, why they don't work.
Exactly. And that is the most important because, even today, only the rule of thumb, the 20% of partners are driving 80% of the revenue. And that's a really disappointing number most of the time. And if we could figure out a way to flip it, that's like the holy grail.
Yes, in today's environment, 2080, I think, used to be the rule of thumb, and now that's aspirational. And what we're finding that is closer to 90-10, in some cases 95-5. But the way channels operate and the way partners take on new vendors has changed completely. Back in 20 years ago, channel partners were looking for new opportunities, and they were willing to invest in driving sales and marketing to drive net new logos because everything was a net new logo. And today, partners are looking at how do we sell more to our existing customers, monetize and leverage those relationships. And so the channels aren't as So new companies that are going into the channels today are hitting a lot less success than the companies that started 20 years ago.
Exactly, exactly. And so what's been happening is as the partners are joining, or the partners have been in the partner program for years, the ones that are not active, we call them the long tail partners, those ones that might have been one and done, but we're still hoping that they're going to do something, right?
Right. And even at that, there's a kind of a romantic notion of the long tail being this curve that gradually slopes and then flattens out. And it's not. You've got the 5 to 10% of the partners that are driving most of the business. And within them, there's a little bit of a gradient based on their performance. And then it drops off and it kind of flatlines because either partners have adopted you as being strategic to their business and they drive meaningful revenues, or they don't. And that's where you get the onesies and twosies. And so the difference in performance is staggering. And the question now is, well, what do we do with this large amorphous blob of long-tailed partners that should be doing a lot better for us?
Exactly. And that leads us to sort of our headline topic, which is if you understood your break-even point with these long-tail partners in the first place, you might have a fire lit under you to do more about it, because there's cash to free up to then incentivize and work better with and help the best partners out there to do more and drive more revenue.
Right. Yeah. So let's talk about how partner programs start to develop. And
Yeah.
companies usually start selling direct, and then for various reasons, they start building out a channel. And as you mentioned in the intro, we've worked with small startups, scale ups, and global companies. So we've seen programs actually start with no partners, then move into global networks that are driving all of the revenues for some companies and a significant portion of revenues for others. And the way the partner programs build up and evolve, it varies from company to company. Some take a very strategic approach and where they are targeting companies and profiles based on very specific parameters. And that's where Partner Optimizer comes in and does such a great job to help them. But a lot of the growth is random. They get an email or call from a partner that has an opportunity, and they close that sale and they never hear from them again, but they're in the partner program. They may have made an acquisition and they picked up someone else's partners and that partner program in the margins, and they just get buried in the overall program. And then everyone has those favorite partners. They've got that partner in Australia that doesn't generate a lot of revenues, but whenever you go to Sydney, they take you out for a beer and there's a lot of fun to be around. So you end up with this mishmash of partners and programs. And what we do is we take a company through an analysis, because ISVs, rightfully so, are really focused on the top line. That's what drives their valuation. So they look at the top line and the growth rate. And as long as their overall channel is moving forward, they can invest in automation programs and marketing programs, and they're driving revenue growth, they're happy with that. And they don't really take the time to sit back and look at, well, what does it actually cost us to support all of these long tail partners? And so I'll start off with an example. We worked with a company that was doing about $120 million in revenues, and all partner driven. They had 800 partners. They had 35 regional managers that were managing their portfolio of partners. And the compensation model for the regional managers was fixed and variable, and the variable was tied only to the top line revenues. So if they had a partner that did $5 or $10 or $15,000, to them it was all additive. It didn't really matter. And I was going through this session with the CFO, and I said, Alain, his name is Alain, his French name. And I said, Alain, what's the partner break-even point? And he said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, take all of the costs associated with your channel program, your salaries, overhead, office space, marketing programs, onboarding, training, partner support, take that total and divide that by 800. And he did, and the number was 17,000. And I said, that's your partner break-even point. And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, a partner that produces less than 17,000 in revenues is actually costing you money. And he thought for a second, and he said, but no, we've got this program, and for us, it's all additive. So if we had 5 or 10,000, that's okay. And I said, not really. I said, you've got this huge investment in the partner program because you have 800 partners. You wouldn't have the same investment if you only had 30 partners that were all performing. And he said, yeah, I guess you're right. So we are scaling our investment and our costs based on the number of partners. And I said, yeah, but it's actually worse than that. And he said, it's worse? Well, how can it be worse? And I said, now take a look at your partner support calls and segment those calls by revenue. And when they did that, they found that 60% of the partner support calls came from partners that generated 6% of the revenues. And when he saw those numbers, you can see kind of the blood drain from his face. He said,
Yeah.
okay, we have a problem. And so we looked at it, and slide, please.
Change the slide. Mhm.
But we looked at the partners and we classified them in 4 different buckets. So 4 quadrants. I think the slide will come up. Yeah. So this is a classic 4 quadrant matrix. And the top left was low performance and high potential. Those were partners that typically represented a competitor, and the competitor was their number one product. And they kept our client as their brand number 2 in case the customer asked for them specifically. The top right, that's the magic quadrant. That's the sweet spot. That's the 5% of the partners that are driving a lot of revenues, but they're also adding net new logo growth and investing in driving new revenues. The bottom right is actually one of the more frustrating groups of partners because they're the ones that are performing at a good level, but they don't want to drive any more business. And in the case of this company, those partners were doing $300,000 to $500,000 per year, and said, that's it. That's all we want to do. We've got one salesperson dedicated to your product. We're not going to invest more. We don't want you to be a bigger part of our business. And there's really nothing you can do with them. The bottom left, the great unwashed. That's the long tail. And every company that has this type of mix of partners, when you look at the long tail, you have partners that have different levels of margins for different reasons. They were brought on at different times. They were brought in for different products. They had a different VP of sales. You were running promotions. You made an acquisition. So in this group, this particular company had partners that were, let's say, grandfathered in at 30%, 25%, and 20% on everything they did, whether that was net new logos or whether it was renewals or upsells. They got their 25, 30% on everything. And I asked Alana, I said, so what would happen if you dropped all of those partners to 10% because they're not driving anything new? You shouldn't be paying them for their past performance, but what they're doing today. And he did the numbers and actually ended up being several $1,000,000. And I said, okay, this is where we need to focus. And what we did, we took some of the millions of dollars that were freed up, and we allocated that in different buckets. One bucket was a win back program for the top left, the ones that were representing a competitor, going to those companies and asking, so what do we need to do to become your number one product, your strategic product? Can we fund a marketing program? Do we need to give you an extra discount on the next 3 sales? Do we need to fund an FTE, a salesperson, to shadow your salespeople for 6 months? Because you can make that type of an investment if they go from doing 1 or 2 deals a year to 10 to 20. The top right, just write them a check. They're doing a great job. They know how to market. Just write them a check. Thank them very much for their performance, and expect that they will use that money very effectively to drive new revenues. Bottom right, nothing you can do with them. You just keep them. You just keep nurturing them. And in the bottom left, we went to those partners with an option. So that you could stay in at your 25 or 30%. You can keep your historical margin on your past performance. But in order to keep that margin, you need to invest in driving net new logo growth, but we'll co-fund that. So it's a co-funded MDF program where each partner was offered $15,000 from the vendor, but they had to co-fund $15,000. The other option was you don't do anything and we'll just cut you down to 10%. But the partners were given that option of continuing with the company, continuing with the margins, but then reinvesting. So those companies would look at that and say, well, this is an important part of our business. We want to protect those margins. And yes, we will make that investment or not, but it's their choice. So we went through this with another company, and this is really an extreme example, but that's why it's really good for illustrative purposes. It was a smaller company. They were doing $11 million in revenue. They had 140 partners worldwide. 95% of the revenues came from existing customers. Only 5% was net new logos. And we went through this exercise. We went through the scorecarding. We did this allocation of the partners by category. And there was a very large number in the bottom left. The company had been around for about 40 years. So they were one of the very early packaged software companies. Many of the partners had been with them for 30 or 40 years. And all of the partners got 40% on everything. On some of them were on maintenance, some were selling a subscription, but they got 40% on everything. And I asked the owner, I said, what would the number be if you dropped all of those partners to 10%? He said, we can't do that. I said, well, why not? He said, well, these people are my friends. I've known them for 20, 30, 40 years. I've seen their families growing up. When I travel, we go out to dinner. They're an extension of my family. I can't just cut them down to 10%. I said, well, before you make that decision, why don't you run the number? And when they did, it came back at 1.8 million. And this is not a company doing 11 million in revenues. He was effectively giving away 2 million, almost $2 million a year to his partners. And he got really quiet and he said, okay, well, it seems like friendship has a price and I need to make a business decision. And so we went through the exercise again of taking out of that 1.8 million, let's take 900,000 and allocate that to the different buckets. And in this case, many of the partners were just lifestyle companies. They had made their money years ago. They were just collecting annuities from them on the and just had no interest in moving forward. So if we could have the next slide, please. And this is why it's really important to understand, why are these companies long-tail partners? Why aren't they performing? They all signed up for a reason, and many of them had one or two deals. They didn't hear from them again. So in going through that analysis, you look at them and you say, well, some of them are just too small to scale. Even if you offer them marketing money, they simply don't have the size, the scale, the sophistication, or the customer base to drive meaningful revenues. Some of them have changed the focus. Now, maybe 20 years ago, they were SharePoint partners, and now they're all cybersecurity. So your product simply doesn't fit their strategy, and there's no way they're going to change the strategy to drive more business for you. So for those companies, the choice is, well, drop them to 10% if you feel some sense of loyalty, or do you just make the decision to drop them completely? If there's really no hope that they are going to be reactivated and drive new revenues, is there even any sense in keeping them in the program and burdening your team with a marketing cost, support cost, whatever? And then you look at the ones that are potentials, and those are the ones that are focused on the competitive products. And what can you do to become their strategic vendor and really drive meaningful revenue growth? And then there can be a lot of partners that were interested, or they built their business on the on-premise version 20 years ago, and they simply didn't make the transition to SaaS. Is there some way that you can go back to them and help them by funding some initiatives or incentivize them to move into SaaS? Or they just gave up on you as a vendor because you didn't communicate with them and they just moved on to other things, but they still have potential to do a lot better than they're doing today. And this is where, and I'm going to give you a little plug here, where Partner Optimizer comes in, because you really need to do that in-depth analysis. And some of it is very quantitative. It's the numbers, the sales, the upsells, the renewal rates, the net new generation from existing accounts. There are a lot of numbers that we can pull out and look at. But a lot of the things that we want to look at are more the soft values. It's their vendor loyalty, it's their business focus, things that you do so well in analyzing the partner profiles and can pull that number out. Because a lot of times the partner account managers at a company, they simply aren't in a position they very often don't know their partners well enough. And I think you use the example that sometimes they don't even have an updated email address. So how do they sit there as an account manager with 50 or 100 or 200 partners and really understand what's driving their business? So being able to do that deep dive analysis, combination of the numbers and the qualitative elements of that relationship, can really define where they should be in that matrix, and then focus the revenue savings that you have on them. So I want to emphasize that this program is not simply designed to reduce costs. That's the top line pitch here. But when you are driving a change in the margin structure, so instead of paying a partner 30% or 40%, now it's 10%, then that number doesn't just go to the bottom line, but it also becomes a revenue contributor. So if you're freeing up $2 million, that's revenues. And if you're valued at 5 to 10x, you're adding $10 to $20 million in valuation just by freeing up that cash. And then the second is, how do you use that cash to drive net new revenue growth? So you get the double benefit of that immediate improvement in your bottom line and your revenues, but you're also now bringing up a form of cash to drive revenue growth in the future. And Dina, let's turn it back over to you at this point.
No, that you did such a great job of describing the problem and the solution. And it's always amazing to me how, as channel executives, we have a hard time understanding what is the value of a partner. What is that potential ROI? What is the break-even point? And you said it so clearly. And I hope that we can get this message out to more and more people who, beyond who are listening today as well. And so, if you go to the next slide, what I wanted to show in relation to this is, we won't spend too much time here, but this is an example of a partner profile that Partner Optimizer is able to bring up, and shows you the business attributes that those partners care most about. So this is one partner profile, a little difficult to see in this slide, I think, on my screen. But when you are looking deeply, you can see what the top 20 business attributes are that they care about when they're communicating out there in the world to their prospective and existing customers. And you can also see how they match with your own ideal partner profile as a company, and what's missing from it. And from that, you can decide and classify what kind of company they are in relation to your business, and whether or not they're worth investing in or not. And if you go to the next slide, we look at a bigger overall distribution. So let's say that you have all of your long tail partners profiled, which Partner Optimizers very easily does by, having our proprietary data mining go out and within a matter of hours pulling thousands of partner profiles back. And we can classify them instantaneously based upon any number of different segmentation searches. So whether you put your ideal partner profile in, or search by region, or search by expertise, it will now show you the distribution, so that of those long tail partners, you're now able to see how they sort out from a level of excellent, very good, good, maybe, and then not a match. And this is a very typical example that we see when our customers are using our platform. You throw in a set of partners like 1,428 here, which is a long tail, and look how it fesses out. 990 are actually not a good match, not worth spending your time and energy to go and activate and invest in. But there are several hundred others that really are worthwhile, and now you can know who they are and spend that time and energy right there with them. Put your best resources on them, free up the cash from those 990 who really are takers, not givers, as Harald basically said, right? And be able to allocate it to the givers who really are who are aligned in their businesses to take you forward. And so the next slide, what we did for you as well is we looked at, what is a partner worth to you from a revenue opportunity? And the reason I wanted to show this to you, and Harald and I have talked about this a lot, is that many channel executives, we don't think as just as clearly when we ask the question, what is the average deal size of a really good partner, right? Sometimes that answer isn't just at the top of our heads, and we're not even thinking about it. They are at the C-suite, but we're not always thinking about it with so many things to do as channel teams and channel chiefs and channel salespeople. Well, if a great partner's average deal size is $24,000, and let's say they do 4 deals a year, which is another metric that's so important to know and think about, because how many deals are you going to get out of a good partner? And if you can't get 4 deals out of them, are they worth your time when you're recruiting and activating them? Well, if you do that, year 1 annual recurring revenue, if you're a software, is 100K. And if they have a 3-year lifetime value, that one great partner is worth $600,000 to you. And so it really is worth it to surface those long tails that could now be aligned with you and take to market, rather than just let them sit around and receive your emails and do nothing with them, because there is money to be revealed. And when you take it to the next slide and you apply this metric to the distribution of excellent, very good, good, and maybe, and let's say that you activate 20% of those excellent because they're super aligned, look at that revenue that can be unleashed if you're spending time with the right partners and activating those right ones that you've already recruited. And as you do that, you can see that could result overall in 38 million in net new revenue over a 3-year period. So, the numbers really speak for themselves. Once you have those right partners, those right long tail partners, and you can start putting the resources on them, freeing up from the ones that are not a match, because imagine spending all that time and resource on 990 partners. You really have a much healthier program. And so, next slide. So that's kind of, the wow. And that's when we talk to our customers, they're seeing that all the time. And it's that aha, that wow, really unleash, the future in their partners. in their partners, those channel chiefs actually getting promoted into new positions because they're driving revenue and they're saving money and they're putting their resources in the right places at the right time. And so, Harald, any other comments you want to mention related to that?
No, just these programs get built up over time, and I think what happens a lot within companies is that they bring in a new channel chief, and they've inherited this blob, this mess, and they're given one mandate, and that is drive more revenues from our channel. We want to see a 10%, 15% increase, and so they're very much focused on, well, how do I get that 10 to 15%? And so it's, again, more MDF, it's incentive programs, it's more automation, build out a marketing platform, all of which require an investment. And they're all good initiatives, but there's so much margin and money and funding to be found by cleaning up what's been built up over the years. It's a little bit like in your house, a lot of clutter accumulates over time. You've got the golf clubs and the fitness center and the gym that you don't use, and your house is full of stuff that you never use or use one time. And if you just get rid of all that clutter, it just frees up a lot of space and a lot of emotional bandwidth as well.
I totally agree, especially if you're inheriting hundreds to thousands of partners. First thing you should do is that audit. Figure out who those are. You may uncover some patterns and trends as well, that there may be sets of partners that are inactive because there may be a focus on a different vertical, or it may be within a region, or they may have a different tech stack. And the insights you can glean up front that will help you build strategy before you invest in other tools, before you invest in the people that you need in the different areas, is really, it's critical. So yeah. So anyway, so if you would like to have a demo of Partner Optimizer, we're happy to show it to you. You just scan the QR code. But more important, if you'd like to talk more with Harald and learn more about how he works with channel teams to unleash that free cash flow and really do it in a way that it just makes sense. And his QR code right there as well, or you could find him in LinkedIn. And Harald, thank you so much. We were able to do this within our half hour, so I'm real excited. I know there are questions that have been asked in LinkedIn, and but we'll try to answer those within the LinkedIn channel because we're out of time right now. But the next episode coming up in 2 weeks is another great one. It's all about orchestrating your ecosystem like a symphony, because that's really what it is. You have different partners with different expertise and different ways to partner. And how do you orchestrate your ecosystem for optimal channel success? A whole other conversation in a different way that you can leverage partner intelligence. So I'm very excited to talk with Alan. He is a brilliant strategist as well. And he's been working in the channel and with partnership ecosystem organizations as one of the innovators in that sector as well. So looking forward to that. Sign up for that on May 23rd. But that's all for now. Thank you for joining us in this first season's episode. And Harald, thanks again. It was so great having a conversation. And you are such a great partner to Partner Optimizer. We are excited.
Thanks, Dina.
All right. Bye, everyone.